r/ask Reddit. What is something that your parents did that you swore never to repeat to your own kids? Be unapproachable. Come talk to me anytime about anything. Everything can be fixed. My parents would take things I had left on the counter or in the open, and when I would go back for it and start looking, would interrogate me about where it was until giving it back to me and telling me to keep up with my things hours later. My mom was super liberal with the belt. She was also very religious and very judgmental, but she'd still have the nerve to always be like, why don't you talk to me about things? Refused to admit I was wrong. The only semblance of an apology I've ever received from my mother was, "I'm sorry you feel that way." I don't think she's ever actually apologized or taken blame for her actions in my 30 odd conscious years. Really poor food choices. Same. I was raised on Hot Pockets and those instant lunch cups. Hey, don't you dare make fun of my cup noodles ever again. IKR. The cup noodles from Japan are so delicious. Those guys even have a cup noodles museum factory where you can make your own cup noodles. My mom. Trailer trash. I'm sorry. Used to go every day to the 7-Eleven and get me a lunch of powdered donuts, a pop, and some chips. Every so often a sandwich in those little plastic triangles, or a chocolate bar. I used to think it was cool, but even at 12, I knew something was up. I remember my teacher one time came up to me and said, "Don't you ever have anything healthy?" I laughed it off, but I felt like it was a shitty thing to do to a kid. I know it's about health, but that would be expensive. I've worked in food service for about a decade, and it always bums me out when parents get an overweight, obese kid something they really shouldn't have. Like, my first job was Wendy's, and some very large families would come in and their grade school aged children would clearly have a weight problem, and they would order them adult size meals like a double baconator, fries, soda, all adding up to a day's worth of calories for a grown man. Not only will they have the weight problem at the present, but imagine being a kid teen and trying to lose weight when all you've known is junk food and all the food at home is probably junk food. I want to raise my kids on a strict but healthy diet so that when they finally have things like soda, it's crazy sweet. Not like kids who grow up on soda and don't like water anymore. I think there needs to be a healthy balance between the two, because in my opinion, if a child is forced to only eat healthy foods their whole childhood, they're going to go crazy once they can eat what they want, and likely gain a lot of weight from eating so much junk food. Tell me I depress them when I confide in them. Sorry dude. When I came out about it, my mom blamed me and said, "Why are you doing this to me?" Like I made up 10 plus years of depression to get at her or something. It's not a good feeling, and I get it. God, yeah, I love my mom, but whenever I tell her how shit I feel, she makes me feel awful for telling her. I always make the mistake of confiding in her and then regret it each time. Constantly comparing myself to other people's kids and belittling my own achievements. That's just the equivalent of comparing your parents' wages, house or job with other kids' parents. My parents always did this to me and then got really offended if I tried to do it to them. Like, if I dared mention a friend going on vacation, they'd be super offended at the comparison when it wasn't even that. It really sucked. When I was little, when my dad was doing anything out in the yard, my brother and I would ask if we could help. The answer was always, "You can help by staying out of the way." My kids are always allowed to help, and so feel they can contribute, grow a sense of self-worth, and an appreciation of group effort. It's damn frustrating when you are trying to get something done that has to be finished on the weekend. We are doing Reno's landscaping, with 3 kids at your ankles all trying to help. But I completely agree with you. We do our best to make it a game so they can all get involved, but they know as soon as any power tools come out to stay back. It's a fantastic learning experience as well. I grew up helping my dad and now work for him. I'm 23 now and will only ever hire somebody for carpet, drywall, and roof work. I can do pretty much everything on my own now, which is an invaluable skill when I take the plunge into home ownership. Teaching them by comparing them to their own better behaved, smarter siblings, in a very condescending manner. OFC. Yes, I'm the middle child of 3, you know, the one with the learning disability. Lecture. My mom could go on for hours for even small misbehaviors. Somehow, It usually looped around to how I didn't keep my room clean, even though the rest of the house was just as much of a mess or worse. When I need to have a stern or serious discussion with my kids, I force myself to make my point in 5 minutes or less. I've even said stuff like, "Look, this is taking way too long. Just don't do this loud thing again. Okay?" I also apologize if I yell as soon as I am emotionally able to after an angry outburst. I don't remember mom ever doing that. I received so many lectures that went on for ages while just repeating the same things over and over again. It was so frustrating to hear something said for the 14th time asked if I understood, and even when a yes answer was given the lecture still continued. Redo things they've done because it's not the exact way I would have done it. My mom would fold the laundry or remake my bed. Drove me nuts and made me feel like why even bother trying? I sometimes wonder if I was affected by this same kind of thing. Not exactly the same, but essentially, when I was a kid, my mom would tell me to clean my room and make my bed. I'd do exactly that to the best of my ability. Then I'd go get her so she could tell me if I was done. It almost never failed. She'd tell me that my room wasn't clean enough and my bed wasn't made enough. Then I was left to try to figure out what I was missing. I would try straightening things more, then get her again, and she'd tell me the room still wasn't clean enough and the bed not made enough. I would just feel baffled because I had no idea what more I could do before it was enough. I felt like there was some invisible mess that she could see, but somehow I couldn't. I couldn't understand what I was missing, and it would never be explained to me exactly what still needed to be straightened up, or what part of my bed still needed to be made. So now as an adult, in just about any context, I often have this underlying self-doubt that I am missing something, somehow, and I can't trust myself to know when I've done enough. Get loaded in front of them. Growing up in a family of drunks has soured me for the most part to drinking even socially. I do partake occasionally but not often. Deep down I feel alcoholism is in my genetics, so I steer clear unless the occasion is perfect. Wake them from a dead sleep on a school night to introduce them to my drunk friends I just came home with because I'm a bartender. Because I said so. I always have a reason why I ask them to do something. If they ask why, I'll explain. I'll explain my reason. My reasons for my reason. Various other factors I considered. I can go on for a while. They know this. The other day I asked my 7-year-old to do something. She said why. I thought about it for a second. I asked, is because I said so a good enough reason? She thought about it for a second, said, yep, for about 3 seconds. I felt like I nailed parenting. Okay, I totally agree with this. My only thing is I have a nephew that always questions why before following directions, and I'm terrified that if he goes in the road and I tell him to get back on the sidewalk, he will question first instead of listening and then get hit by a car. Probably just me being paranoid though. It's a legit issue. Compliance is something you have to have for emergency situations. Sometimes there is no time to explain why something needs to be done. Sometimes you can't explain for another reason. Also, if the only way they will comply is if they know why, they are going to have a hard time as an employee. Child has black eyes from beatings. Father, you have your mother's eyes. Try to be controlling over my kid's life and blame all their problems on the other parent. Dude, when I was 15 my dad, an MD, decided to have a meeting with me to discuss my future and make a choice what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a programmer so bad. I love that shit. So I said programming, software engineering. He went on for over an hour how that profession is lame and you'll always be behind the scenes unrecognized. This was back in 2004. How wrong was he? So, I didn't know what to tell him. I remember my cousin, who was a few years older at the time, told me accounting would be a good fit for me if I didn't know what to pick. It would be easy for me and I'd fly through my degree. So I remembered that and said, alright, I'll go into accounting. He literally exploded in my face, yelling and shouting how could I throw my future away. I was scared of him. I never was close to him. He barely spent time with me my entire life. This grown-ass man was never there for me but decided to control my life. I knew what he wanted me to say. I just wanted the yelling and shouting to stop and I wanted him to calm down. So, I said defeatedly, okay, I'll be a doctor. He immediately turned around, smiled happy and congratulated me. I felt what it's like to have a part of me die that day. I wasted 3 years of life on med school before I was like duck this shit, got depressed and asked my sister to help me convince him to transfer over to engineering school, but my life was never the same. And my psyche was changed as well. I easily give up now. More irritable. Can't sleep well at all, etc. So I get what you mean. My kids will choose what they want to be even if it's ducking curling. Use them as leverage against the other parent. Abuse them. Allow them to be abused by a significant other. Abandon them, then return years later once they've grown and try to cause them as much pain as possible for who knows why. I have 4 sons and I genuinely can't imagine doing most of what happened to me to them. Blows my mind. Did your parents battle over who would get to claim you as dependents on their taxes too? Didn't expect to wake up to so many other people with the same experience. That's extremely sad. If you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. That was stupid to me at 10 years old. My dad used to say that to me when I was younger, but instead I'd just cry more and he just gave up. I also would tattle on him to my mom and she'd get after him. He never actually did anything. I wish that were the case. My dad would follow up with another spanking or belt whooping. I was not allowed to have any friends or date. Also, I had my door taken off at 14 and told I didn't deserve privacy because I slammed it. Guilt tripping. Physical and emotional abuse. Edit. I asked to hang a sheet up for privacy AMD. They said I didn't deserve privacy for slamming my door. I had my first ever panic attack that way and my stepdad told me to stop over exaggerating. My depression and anxiety was always belittled. I was in a mental hospital and my dad and stepmom came to see me, and my stepmom just kept telling me what a horrible person I was and that I was just there to get away from her. Also, my stepdad would call me a slut and punish me for things my brother did. He also molested me on several occasions, and when I told my mom, he convinced her I was lying. He told me my feelings didn't matter. But if my kid ever came forward and said something like that about my spouse, I won't just not believe them and accuse them of lying. Judgmental behavior. I want my kids to know that I truly love them because of who they are and not feel like they have to hide certain parts of who they are because they are afraid I won't care about them anymore. Have too many pets in the house. I loved them all, but at the highest we had 11 cats and 3 dogs. And it was just kind of embarrassing and I never wanted to bring people over to my house. Your mom is that granny we see in movies. Physical punishment. Made me really resent them. My kids are 16, 18, and 20 and they are ducking amazing human beings. And my parents actually bragged to people how we don't use physical punishment. So that feels good. Having kids. There are plenty of people on this planet who should not have had children, and my parents definitely shouldn't have had them. I am not mentally stable enough for kids because of my mum's behavior towards me, so I've made the decision not to have any. The cycle ends with me. Damn. Beat me to it. My parents were great. They did everything right, I think. I have fond memories of growing up and being loved. That said, I don't think I could provide the same sort of life for any child of my own. I can't take care of a damn houseplant or a goldfish to save my life. There is no way I can remember to feed, bathe, clothe and care for a living creature while also fulfilling its complex emotional needs. Sorry, world, you're going to have to live without a crop of Coke baby Karens. Being too strict. Doing this can actually make my child good in lying, which is not cool. The stricter the rules, the better the acting gets. Nowadays I'm always fine. They wouldn't let me buy a video game system. Said it rots the brain. I never understood why watching TV is okay but not gaming. I've played video games ever since I left after high school. My son, daughter and I all enjoy them. It still stings when I think of that NES I wanted so bad back then. At least you're using your brain more while gaming. Don't waste time on it though. Train that super brain with late night advertisements on the latest self-sharpening knife that also doubles as a whip. But that's not all. If you're on the first 100 callers, we'll chuck in another master self-sharpening knife whip. Well, I had a stepmother who insisted God was punishing my dad for being mean to her while blood was flowing out of his mouth, eyes and nose. then refused to drive him to the hospital. That always seemed like something I'd want to avoid. Any friends I would make, she would tell me I couldn't hang out with them because of X reason. She grounded me for 6 months because I forgot to take out one of the trashes. Not that it mattered. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere anyway. There was one time that I had to stand in a corner in my underwear without heat because she heard a noise that woke her up, and obviously it was me. Once I confessed I could go, I ended up lasting about 18 hours of insisting it wasn't me, ugly crying in the corner till like 3 AM at 8 years old. I had to endure 10 years of that because she kept emptying my dad's bank account every time he got paid so he couldn't afford a divorce lawyer. I hated that woman. What an absolute sack of shit. Argue in front of them. My parents fought a lot around me and I hated it growing and do not want to subject my kids to that. I remember one time when I was about 8 years old, I was in the car with my parents. They were arguing like always, but being trapped in that metal box with both of them screaming back and forth became too much. We stopped at a red light and I unbuckled my seatbelt and got out of the car and started running. My mom, who was in the passenger seat, ran out after me, and after he pulled over the car my dad did as well. They caught up to me and their attitudes completely changed. They promised me they wouldn't fight in front of me again. A promise they broke time and time again until their divorce. I'm hoping I can do a better job of keeping my promise. Kudos for sticking up for yourself. I wish I did something like that instead of enduring it. How from a young age I had perfected the staring out the window and wishing I was anywhere but here, look. Talking about body issues, dieting and shaming things like stretch marks and cellulite. Took me many years to appreciate my body. Got a ton of stretch marks when I was 15 and felt so ashamed. Been on so many diets since then and have tried so many pills. I now have a bad relationship with food, but I've grown so much and I'm trying really hard. I will not do this to my future kids. Yep, my mom didn't talk about dieting so much, but would comment on my weight. I went from a size 1 to a size 7 in middle school. Size 7 still isn't big though. I remember I had a stint of doing meth. Only lasted a month and I wised up, but I had lost close to 30 pounds in that month. I don't know how my mom didn't realize I was on something. I went and showed her how much I had lost by showing her how big my pants were. She replied with, "You still have love handles though." I was spanked. I thought I'd grow up and spank too because I ended up okay and thought that's how you correct kids. But then as I got older I thought back to how I'd deal with other kids who made me mad or wouldn't listen to me. I hit them. It clicked, this wasn't what I needed to do. I became my mother's only confidant from a young age, to the point where I was telling her she needed to get a divorce when I was only 14-15. I would never put my hypothetical children in a position where I'm emotionally dependent on them in that way. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.